Alrighty then, this is me talking to you about another thing. We got facts, truth, and philosophy. What is all that? Anyways, during an online course promoted as a foundational step towards turning one's mind for professional spiritual growth, presumably for eventual greater happiness and even bliss through self-realization, liberation, and other big things, right? The guru asks a simple sounding question, right? What is the difference between fact and truth? Then, by answering his own question, he explains that while it's a fact that each individual sees him or herself exclusively as a man or a woman, or other gender variant thing, depending, hopefully, whatever. It's equally a fact that each person is a product of a union between a man and a woman. Therefore, the truth, which is inferred from these facts, is that each person must contain a bit of both sexes. He added in jest, if you want to kill a truth, call in some scholars. At first glance, the guru's answer and his muddling over the reputation of scholars seems quasi-philosophical and intellectual jugglery. The difference between the fact and truth was largely semantics. But over the next week or so, the more I thought about it, the more meaningful and significant the difference between fact and truth is. So, this is a little thing that I put together and in with my contemplation and speculation on the meaning of truth and philosophy and why appreciation of the two may be vital for transcendence. Fact, science, and art, the two steps to truth. In terms of value to society in acquiring knowledge through education, an inevitable discussion point is the relative worth of science and art. This guru's explanation of fact and truth appears to overlap with the counter positions of science and art. So let's further consider how those disciplines relate to fact and to truth. Science has many definitions, right? But at its core, it involves the use of a clearly defined and accepted method of observation, which often involves some sort of measurements, the scientific methodologies, right? It's an observation of a natural phenomena or an experimental condition to generate reproducible results, or otherwise called data. After peer review, these data are accepted as facts relative to the conditions and the methods under which they were collected. Hence, most definitions of science refer to discovery of data or facts throughout the scientific methods. Such discovered facts serve as building blocks of knowledge, and modern definitions of science rarely mention the truth. Likely because, compared to facts, the truth can have an aura of subjectivity around them, because you can't measure it. Keeping the guru's explanation about facts and truth in mind, right, it would appear that science helps establish facts as they are in the present moment. But in doing so, researchers and scholars can become so focused on the objects of study that they risk losing sight of the larger truth. A bit like not seeing the wood for the trees. The truth in this context becomes an inner mental or intuitive realization of the existence of the metaphorical wood, which is always bigger than the facts that build it up. From that perspective, facts appear as fragments of information derived from an autopsy of the truth. In themselves, facts are dry, heartless, and even temporal. Establishing facts is painstaking and time-consuming, A fact today may not be a fact tomorrow. For instance, a non-infective virus at one point in time can mutate and jump species and become virulent in another point in time. Moreover, a fact in one physical location may not be a fact in another. For example, time passes at a different rate on the Earth's surface compared with far away from the Earth. 1 year on Pluto is not the same as 1 year on the Earth, is it? Contrary to the cerebral and augmentative nature of science, what Nobel laureate Richard Feynman called a culture of doubt, art is understood as a human creative flair with trappings of emotions and faith. Those pesky emotions. Art takes the route of the heart. Isn't that interesting? There's art in the heart, isn't there? It helps visualize and express directly without the need for 1,000 words, intuitive images of understanding. Art imagery builds from life experiences and feelings. It's prone to fallibility owing to its subjective nature. It has even been argued that intuition-based ideas have lesser durability compared with the scientific facts, which are more anchored in certainty. But that may not necessarily be true, right? Beliefs, myths, and icons have the tenacity to persist over millennia. Since desire is the basis for initiation of all action, it is hard to move forward with any task without putting one's heart into it. You need passion, you need motivation, right? Including the search for facts, right? If you don't have a curiosity, if you don't have the ability to put your passion into something, to put your heart into it, what's the purpose? What's the purpose of all this science? What's the purpose of identifying these so-called facts? So this suggests that the objective facts almost always have their roots in subjectivity. Some science-leaning thinkers say that the reason for a perceived emotional experience in the arts being considered inferior or relative to the science-based facts, of course, is that matters of the heart are by definition subjective and individualized. As such, subjectivity is not shareable and cannot be experienced by others in a reproducible way, completely separate from the scientific methodologies and scientific processes, right? A good example of this is that everyone sees a different meaning in the Mona Lisa's smile. Moreover, the individual emotional experience is not consistent each time one encounters the same object, event, or person based on a person's experience, because an individual is based on all of their individual experiences. The counterpoint to emotional states not being shareable is that people laugh and cry and even become hysterical watching other people do the same thing. Laughter is contagious. Emotions are contagious. Somehow people are entangled at an emotion or a mind level that they cannot measure. At this point in time, science represents what we sometimes mistakenly think we know and can agree on more or less collectively based on logic and reason, or based on a bunch of people reading the same scientific study and then agreeing upon that study as a whole. They consider that theory and they move that into under the guise of a fact. Art, on the other hand, is everything that we don't know for a fact, but assume that our imagination or intuition can help to understand or explain our so-called ignorance. Art allows us to make intuitive mental leaps beyond material facts. For the scientist, there is no path to truth without measurable certainty. For the artist is quite contrary. As the American poet Heather McCullough puts, absurd, we should approach the heavens with a yardstick. While science remains the best tool for systematic observation to build up facts related to the issues of interest, it's not without its limitations. In 2005, a paper by John Ioannidis in PLOS Medicine made headlines because it claimed that the most published research findings are absolutely wrong. And in 2017, BBC reported that science is facing a reproducibility crisis when more than 2/3 of researchers have tried and failed to reproduce another scientist's experiments. Problems in science are often linked to two issues: insufficiency or inadequacy of research methods and difficulty with the interpretation of the resulted data. Facts are data that emerge from a systemic inquiry. But in order to make sense of data, they have to be interpreted. Science methodology is designed to reduce the bias or the gut feelings, right, etc., in their data collection. But to draw conclusions from the data, which is mostly numbers only, and one needs the human mind with all its biases and quirks, because we're human. We're a whole bunch of things, not just one particular thing. It cannot be broken down, although we did try, and we are labeling everything in the human body, aren't we? To reach bigger truths, one needs minds with intuition, imagination, and boldness, coupled with humanity. Research training equips scientists with competence to select and apply methods appropriately, but it does not necessarily help with the next step. The corresponding scenario for art is not everyone who can draw or practicing the craft qualifies as an artist, right? And needless to say, not every intuitive idea is the big truth, right? So let's look at truth, above and beyond the facts. So when we think of truth, words such as facts, reality, evidence, and proof spring to mind, right? All these words are also associated with scientific fact-finding, justice, honesty, goodness. So then what is truth? And how is it associated with the words that I just spoke, including science? Psychologists say that by age 2, children begin to understand what is true and what is not. But there's more to truth than that. So the so-called bigger truths are the objects of pursuit in our myths and our stories. Truth is the stuff for which our heroes fight and die. Some people spend entire lifetimes searching for one ultimate truth. An obvious property of any truth is that it's adept at hiding from our view and discernment. It can't be measured. And it can't be measured, but it can be. Because truth is individual. It's mysterious and rare, which is why it's so sought after. We need to label absolutely everything, don't we? We need a methodology or a checklist to go through in order to meet all the criteria to have our specific outcome, which should be truth. But that's not how it works. That's not how the universe works. In a sense, every action and thought represents a quest for the truth. Western philosophy has taken an intellectual approach in its search for the meaning of truth. In this approach, investigation of objects or concepts happen by dissecting the entirety of interests. A post-mortem of sorts. This has proved to be a very useful method in understanding matter and its composition by smashing them together in their components. Because that's what we do. We just smash it. But despite our knowledge of molecules, atoms and subatomic particles, which incidentally are more like waves than particles in the double slit experiment, go check it out, double slit experiment, big deal. Are we any closer to the truth about the universe? For example, after the discovery in July 2012 in the Higgs boson, right, the elusive God particles, physicists conceded that 96% of the universe remained unknown. Well, how about that? Similarly, mapping of the entire human genome was completed in 2003, but even today, we don't know what the function of 98% of human DNA is. And a lot of scientists are saying, well, it's just junk. We don't know what it is, so it's junk. Because they know better than the creator of what that stuff is for. On the other hand, theoretical physicists combining abstract mathematics and imagination can foretell truths, which are provided much later by experimental evidence. So, while as a general rule facts precede the realization of the truth, shining examples of the opposite in Einstein's general theory of relativity, which predicted truth of curved space-time and gravitational waves long before the experimental data confirmed the genius's leap of faith. He's a scientist. He shouldn't be predicting things like that. How dare he look for the truth and find some remnant of it? A good example of Western intellectual approach to understand the natural phenomenon is Aristotle's definition of truth. And that's to quote, "To say of what is that is not, or of what is not that is false. While to say what is that is, and of what is not that is true." End quote. Metaphysicist 101, 1B25. This circular-sounding statement, which gave rise to the so-called correspondence theory of truth in philosophy, at best is a good beginning. Following the intellectual approach, neuroscientists have been dissecting the brain in search of the mind, but like truth, mind is too slippery of a customer. Observations made by the sense may be processed in the brain, observations made by the senses may be processed by the brain, but the experience of aliveness is created when all cells in the body work together. Unlike the physical body, which is relatively easy to understand because it has defined boundaries, the mind appears to be movable and boundless. In one moment, thoughts can jump from here and now in the distant past and to the distant past or into the future. And in the state of aliveness, awareness of the self happens in the whole body, not just in some neurons in the head. The mindfulness theory meditation in a new garb. Right? Got mindfulness meditations now. Yay. It recommends that each new moment should be approached with the full mind, presumably one that includes the body and beyond. New research has shown that the brain is a recording device and the mind is nowhere to be seen. If I was to reach out and grab my cup with all these electrodes and stuff on my head, it's not the synapses do not fire to pick up the mug until after the mug is actually picked up. It may be a nanosecond or 2 or 3 or 5, but it is distinctive that the neurons of the brain do not fire until the incident has been initiated or completed. So, in essence, the mind has nothing to do with the brain except for the brain's recording device. The Sanskrit word satya loosely translates as the truth. It's used ubiquitously in all Indian philosophies: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and as the ultimate goal of human existence, right? Etymologically, satya relates to being and essence. That which remains unchanged and is unmanifested. Here, satya alludes to the mind behind matter. In Western philosophy, the study of things as they really are is considered under the subfield of ontology, which asks whether things exist without there being an observer. While some philosophers believe that such a truth can never be observed so long as the observer is within the universe, Indian philosophical systems argue that since satya, or the truth, is the essence of all nature, including humans, one need not go anywhere to experience it except inwards. The kingdom of heaven is where? Come on, Christians, Bible readers. Where is the kingdom of heaven? Truth about everything is buried in the history of the universe, going back to the Big Bang. In everyday life, the discovery of truth always relates to investigating the past. Anything that is observed in one moment is linked to multitude of preceding moments. In other words, no matter where one is, one has come there from somewhere else. Following that line of thinking, an individual's mind carries the totality of memory of the person, which is possibly written in the 98% unexplained DNA? Don't know. All behaviors exhibited by the dance of life are merely reactions between the unmanifested total memory of individuals and the external environment. Truth is realized when sensations associated with the recognition of facts resonate with the total memory within. Here, resonance is like the experience of listening to music. The brain finds only certain combinations of notes pleasing, and non-resonating combinations just feel wrong, like the 440 Hz F sharp. Bad news bears. Resonance, which has spooky quantum connotations, is a good analogy for experiencing the sensation of knowing and realizing truth. In quantum mechanics, subatomic particles exist in the realm of probabilities beyond the world of cause and effect as we know it. Particles such as photons, atoms, and even molecules can be in two places at the same time, and can be entangled with other particles such that they can communicate with their entangled counterparts instantaneously, even if they are light years apart. The role of quantum mechanics in biology is being increasingly recognized. For example, there is a growing support for the idea that quantum properties of atoms enable our mere 400 olfactory receptors to distinguish up to 1 trillion odors. Moreover, the increasing number of physicists are beginning to associate the quantum nature of matter with the concept of a universal mind and consciousness. Pardon me. Another philosophical viewpoint about truth comes from Sanskrit phrase Satyam Shivam Sudaram. Satyam Shivam Sudaram, which is commonly used in India to refer to the creation, right? Literally, the three words mean truth, Shiva, and beauty, right? Here, the meaning of truth is tied to the word Shiva, which represents the eternal creative dance-like movement of the universe. To the beholder, whether an artist or a scientist, every aspect of the creation is awe-inspiring. Unless, of course, you don't have any awe feelings as a scientist. As Richard Feynman said, referring to the beauty of a flower, it's not just the beauty at this dimension at 1 centimeter. There are also beauty at smaller dimensions, the inner structure, also the processes. Realization of the sheer beauty of the creation through observations of galaxies down to the magical quantum probabilities disappearing into the nothingness is a truth like no other. Buddhism Satya is one of 2 types, conventional and ultimate. So, at its simplest, truth is the realization that produces a common resonance within most people. For example, the popularity of a song. At its highest level, truth is that sense of knowing which satiates the mind completely, bringing tranquility and humanity. Here, truth is that which resonates perfectly with the truth an individual cognizant of the unmanifested essence of the universe already knows. But such truth doesn't come easy. Some believe it takes many births. For starters, it needs a lifetime of deep introspection in a prolonged state of stillness. Right, mindfulness or meditations. Remarkably, quantum effects need silence and stillness for accurate measurements. The ultimate truth cannot be reached unless all aspects from the beginning to the end of everything are taken into account. Philosophy is considered by me and probably many others, the path to the truth. Humans experiencing strange paradoxes. Science is able to dabble in questions such as, hey, is our brain hardwired to believe in produced God? Or is our brain hardwired to perceive and experience God? But it's not equipped in terms of methodology to answer the question, does God exist? Science can show us the marvel that the cosmos is and tickle our imagination regarding an as fascinating concept as singularity, but cannot as yet answer whether singularity where it has come from. Art can create lifelike representations of our imaginations, creating for some people sensations of real encounters with the Creator. In this regard, an ironic situation was reported by Mark Ravenhill in The Guardian, April 2008. Ravenhill says that when the crew of a popular British science fiction television series, Doctor Who, meet the eminent biologist and author Richard Dawkins of the God Delusion fame, right? They were falling at his feet in awe and reverence. And Ravenhill's blog argues that Richard Dawkins' spectacular army must be stopped, for future generations will be not denied a source of inspiration. When paradoxes puzzle the human mind and all the thinking leading up to those paradoxes is organized for purposes of systematic study, it becomes philosophy. It is by design that the highest academic degree in both the arts and science is the Doctor of Philosophy, or PhD. In the absence of philosophy, science and arts and fact and truth appear as naked duality. Philosophy helps to blend art and science like water and flour in kneading the dough. Easy to know that both are there, but impossible to separate. Of course, philosophies are more complex than just kneaded dough. They need to encompass multiple facts and intuitions in the attempt to create a model that explains everything. Research generates data, and scholars argue about their meaning, filling science and philosophy journals and creating endless, irresolvable discussions. Yet, continued conversations, retrospections, and analyses are important for both the science and the arts. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, also called the Nalanda tradition, right? Even the words Buddha cannot be accepted without logical analysis, right? Ironically, Buddha is the Sanskrit word meaning one who has gone beyond the intellect, right? Anyway, philosophies are interested as pathways to the truth. It is expected that seekers of the truth will transcend the Tao, reconciling facts with the truths they already know deep within. But many scholars get tangled in arguments and suffocate the truth. The Tao is rendered a deep trench from which it is hard to get out of. Systematic philosophy needs to avoid the science trap of getting lost in the trees. Western philosophers since Plato have been searching for a systematic answer to creation and life based on reason and logic. This is much like physicists searching for a unified theory of everything, but are pathways to a never-ending puzzle, the pieces of which keep multiplying right? Eastern philosophies, on the other hand, recognize the contradictions and accept them for what they are. As the 2nd century Indian Buddhist philosopher Nagarjuna put it, the nature of things is to have no nature. It is their non-nature that is their nature. This is what he's trying, that's his truth, right? Each individual has to find their own philosophy and therefrom their own truth, even if it disappoints. The circular nature of Nagarjuna's statement is like Aristotle's definition of truth. Maybe that's what makes it whole. It's hilarious that the original reason for university was to have more philosophers, not scientists, not artists, and studying philosophy because they believed that free thinkers and people and seekers of the truth would build strong nations. And yet now, if you're studying philosophy in college, people are always asking, what can you do with that? How much money are you going to make with that? Why do you do that? That's stupid. Anyways, that, my friends, is my take on fact, truth, and philosophy, as they all go together and yet don't. I am Nolen-John Zander. This is 9 Elements Ministry with Habituating Happiness. Find your happiness through philosophy. Search for your truth. Find your passion and purpose and your happiness through your truth. Have a happy day.